Hades is a roguelike action RPG in which you take the role of Zagreus trying to escape from the titular Hades. It sounds easy to explain, but this game's depth is immense. I want to handle this game not by segments, but by areas you fight your way through to escape. So we'll be starting with Tartarus, then Asphodel, then Elysium, and then finally ending at Temple of Styx. So naturally, let's start with Tartarus. As we begin our ascent out of Hades, we first become acquainted with the structure of how we will escape. We fight our way through a procedurally generated room upon which grants a reward to help us. The help can come in a way of a boon that provides bonuses or skills for the current run, a key or darkness which can be saved and used for another run, gold that is used to buy things in your current run, a hammer that changes one of the boons you've already received, or a pomegranate that increases the strength of one of your boons. As you fight, you are given an option of a number of these possibilities. You choose which reward you wish to fight for, and the cycle repeats. Part of the fun of these runs are the possibilities of boon and weapon combinations, allowing all runs to feel unique and different. The idea of repetition stems from the very type of video games Hades is, a roguelite. Much like Wolf mentions in his analysis, genre and the video game, the genre of roguelite comes with certain gameplay nuances that will persist. The death and rebirth cycle, allowing for multiple attempts, and the procedurally generated rooms, and even the way you power up between runs, all used to aid the overall theme of the game, but also allowing for a fun and useful structure. Now we move on to Asphodel. After overcoming the first boss of the game, one of the Furies, particularly Megara, we move on to Asphodel, which makes me want to mention the boss fights. There are a number of boss fights as you progress throughout the game, and while some of the normal enemies can be engaging, the bosses are where the combat really shines, allowing for you to push your mechanics to the test. Are you fast enough to dodge the attacks? Can you keep up with everything coming at you? Only one way to find out, and this is most likely where most will encounter their first death, which takes you back to Hades, where generally you'll get taunted by Hades and can interact with a number of NPCs, resulting in unique conversations and sometimes rewards. However, this is where you get to spend the keys in darkness I mentioned earlier, allowing you to buy things like a revive per run or additional weapons, allowing for an advantage when you plunge back in and attempt to escape again. Jesper Juhl, in The Art of Failure, an essay on the pain of playing video games, talks about this idea of dying only to try again, how it can be painful, stressful, but also enjoyable. It allows the player to grow, which can complement the story. Typically we try to avoid failure, but it can seem inevitable. But Hades encourages it, letting your next attempt be better than your last, easing this cycle, especially when the game itself focuses on doing the same thing over and over again. Elysium. After managing to beat the Bone Hydra, you are rewarded with more combat. What I want to discuss here, though, is the artwork. It is beautiful through and through. The gods and goddesses all look phenomenal, and the in-game artwork complements it perfectly. But this stage is where we really start to notice the stages themselves. As Zagreus progresses through each zone, we see that he's getting closer to the overworld. The first zone is darkness, and enemies are designed around this theme. Asphodel brings a bit more color, adding in the red of lava as it is the layer above. But with Elysium, we start to see greens and blues, colors associated with outside and sunshine, letting the environment communicate our progress, allowing for the feeling of progress without someone coming in and saying, "Hey, looks like you're near the surface." The idea of thinking about what you're doing as you play can be called metagaming, something that Hades takes advantage of. There are plenty of details like those you may never notice if you only do one playthrough, but the fact that you do these runs repeatedly allows for that meta perspective, letting you think about things like the environment and how you play. The Temple of Styx is distinctly unique in that instead of forcing you through a set number of rooms to get to the boss, you're given the choice of how many rooms you tackle and in what order. Each room shares a possibility of dropping the item you need to get to the entrance to the final boss room, along with an area where you can purchase last-minute upgrades or boons, but in this section I want to briefly dissect some of the story. Zagreus has one simple goal: escape and find his mom. Hades has one goal: stop Zagreus and keep him in Hades. These two goals drive the main conflict of the game. Each NPC has an opinion and a unique way of expressing. Gods provide boons for each run, however characters like Megara are forced to fight you despite her willingness and hope that you succeed. Even down to Cerberus, who moves out of your way to let you fight Hades, leading to this final confrontation that has a lot of emotion behind it. Zagreus desperate for escape, Hades wanting to spare him the pain of leaving. Upon Zagreus' victory, he meets his mom, but only briefly, before he realizes he can't leave Hades for long before his body is too weak and forcibly returned. But those precious few moments he spends with his mom make it worth it, and now that he's escaped once, he can do it again, and again, and again, all to enjoy those precious few moments despite the inevitability that he'll be forced back to Hades. Hades is a queer game, at least in my perspective. It breaks the conventions of a normal game and even roguelites, which we best see in the Temple of Styx. The number of rooms is optional, you're allowed upgrades and fixes to your build in this last stage, almost as if it's a type of reward for making it this far. Even the uniqueness of Cerberus, allowing you to pass even though he is supposed to be the final guardian between you and Hades. And if I need to make it any more obvious, Zagreus and several other characters are bisexual or across the sexual spectrum. Not that they needed to be, but it allows for inclusion and an extra dimension to these characters. With all that being said, Hades is a great game and deserves every merit it has earned, multiple times over. From the way it engages in metagaming or how it encourages failure, it allows a lot of room for analysis on both personal level and a scholarly level.